All right, listener. So we're taking a deep dive today into the aftermath of a legal drama that's got the YouTube community buzzing. You sent us some clips about the settled lawsuit between iilluminaughtii and her former business partner at Oz Media.
Yeah.
And it seems even though the case is closed, there's still a lot to unpack.
And it's really interesting how this case, I think, highlights some of the unique challenges with online business partnerships. On the surface, everything can look picture perfect in the world of YouTube.
Right.
But behind the scenes, things can get really complicated, especially when you're talking about money and creative control.
Absolutely.
Well,
So for those who might have missed the initial drama, let's rewind back to August 2023. Oz Media hit iilluminaughtii with a countersuit,
right.
alleging she was misusing company funds for personal expenses while employees were allegedly facing delayed payments. There were also some whispers of not great business practice.
Yeah, and this is where things get a little bit murky. The lawsuit was settled late 2023, and as part of the settlement, both parties signed a non-disclosure agreement.
Right.
Or NDA.
Yeah.
Which essentially means they're legally bound to keep the details of that settlement confidential.
Which makes sense, right? It allows both sides to move on without having to rehash the conflict publicly.
Yeah.
But then some of the legal documents from the case resurfaced online, and suddenly everyone's speculating about what went down and whether there might be further legal action.
Right. The confusion here really stems from how legal information is accessed and interpreted online.
Okay.
So the documents that reappeared were actually routine updates on a legal website, not new filings.
Yeah, sure.
But the fact that certain sections were redacted,
Okay.
basically blacked out to protect sensitive information, just fueled even more speculation.
It's like finding a puzzle with some of the pieces missing. Your brain just can't help but try to fill in those gaps.
Exactly.
Right.
And that's where the role of critical thinking, I think, becomes really crucial for anyone following this online. It's very easy to get swept up in speculation, especially when YouTubers that we trust are presenting their interpretations of these complex documents.
Speaking of YouTubers, Vangelina Scoff tackled this whole situation in one of her recent videos.
Yeah.
And she really emphasized the importance of respecting the NDA and avoiding speculation, especially about those redacted sections which likely contain personal information.
What I find really fascinating about her approach is how she manages to address such a serious and potentially damaging situation with a touch of humor. I mean, she even pokes fun at herself with that whole wet hair bit.
Yeah, it's almost like she's acknowledging the absurdity of the whole situation, while also gently reminding her viewers to take a step back and consider the potential harm of spreading rumors or jumping to conclusions.
Yeah, and that's a delicate balance to strike.
For sure.
It speaks to the unique position these YouTubers hold. They're not journalists, but they're often the ones breaking down these complex events for their audiences, especially when it comes to legal matters that might otherwise feel very inaccessible.
It's true. They have this platform and this direct line of communication with their viewers, which makes their perspective incredibly influential. But it also comes with this responsibility to avoid amplifying potentially harmful speculation.
Absolutely. And that brings us, I think, to a bigger question for anyone following this saga. How do we, as online content consumers, navigate this landscape of legal documents, YouTuber commentary, and our own desire to understand what happened?
It's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Right.
Where do we draw the line between curiosity and respecting boundaries, especially when we're dealing with a situation that involves real people and potentially sensitive?
Yeah, it's a tricky situation for sure. And I think it really highlights the blurred lines between public and private life, especially when it comes to online personalities. YouTubers like iilluminaughtii and Oz Media, they've built their entire careers on sharing parts of their lives with their audience. But when legal issues arise like this, it forces everyone to kind of confront those boundaries.
It's like that whole concept of parasocial relationships, right? Where viewers feel like they know these creators personally, even though they're really only seeing a very curated version of their lives online.
Exactly. And when something like a lawsuit happens, it kind of disrupts that carefully crafted image. Suddenly there's this conflict that feels really real and personal, even though viewers are only privy to a very small fraction of the information.
And I think it's easy to understand why people get so caught up in the speculation. It's just human nature to try to make sense of things, especially when it involves people that we feel connected to, even if that connection is largely one-sided.
It's almost like a soap opera playing out in real time with fans trying to piece together the narrative based on limited information and their own interpretations of the people involved.
But we have to remember that these are real people, with lives and families and reputations that can be deeply affected by online speculation. And in this case, the existence of the NDA adds another layer of complexity.
That NDA isn't just a legal formality. It's a critical tool for allowing both parties to move forward.
Right.
I mean, imagine if every single detail of the settlement was made public. It would likely just prolong the conflict, fuel further speculation, and potentially cause even more harm to everyone involved.
It's a reminder that sometimes less is more, and that respecting boundaries, even in this age of information overload, is just crucial.
Absolutely. And it's not just about respecting the legal boundaries set by the NDA. It's also about respecting the emotional boundaries of those involved. A lawsuit like this can be incredibly draining and stressful. And constantly having it dissected and debated online can just make it even harder to heal and move on.
Right. It's a good reminder to kind of take a step back and ask ourselves, what's the purpose of my engagement with this information? Am I genuinely trying to understand a complex situation, or am I just getting caught up in the drama?
Yeah, and even when we are genuinely seeking information, it's crucial to do so with a critical eye.
Right.
We're only seeing a fraction of the story, and it's so easy to misinterpret information or draw conclusions based on incomplete evidence.
Well, that's where I guess critical thinking comes in, right?
Right.
It's about questioning our assumptions, considering multiple perspectives, and recognizing that the truth is often far more nuanced than what we see presented online.
And it's important to remember that legal battles are rarely black and white. There are often many sides to a story, and a settlement doesn't necessarily imply guilt or innocence.
Often it's a pragmatic decision made to avoid further legal costs and emotional strain, regardless of the underlying facts of the case.
Exactly. And that's why it's so crucial to avoid making judgments or taking sides based solely on snippets of information or one-sided narratives.
So while it's natural to be curious about the details of the settlement, we have to remember that our curiosity should never come at the expense of someone else's privacy or well-being.
This whole situation really underscores the power and the responsibility that comes with online platforms and audience.
Right.
On the one hand, these platforms give a voice to creators and allow them to connect with audiences in ways that were never possible before. But on the other hand, they also create an environment where information speculation and judgment can spread so rapidly.
And it's up to all of us to be mindful of that dynamic and to engage in online discussions in a way that is both informed and respectful.
It's a delicate balance, but it's one that we need to strive for if we want to create a healthier and more responsible online ecosystem.
Absolutely. It's interesting how this case, even though it's settled, it continues to spark these conversations on platforms like Reddit and YouTube. The legal battle might be over, but the online discussion is still very much alive.
It just shows how these kinds of situations can have a lasting impact, especially when we're talking about online personalities.
Right.
Their careers are really built on their public image and the trust that they cultivate with their viewers.
And when something like this happens, a lawsuit,
Right.
It definitely affects that image and that trust.
Yeah.
Even if the details are confidential, the fact that there was a conflict just raises questions and doubts.
And, it puts these creators in kind of a tricky position.
Right.
On the one hand, they're legally bound by the NDA.
Yeah.
To stay silent about the specifics of the case.
Right. But on the other hand, that silence just creates a vacuum that gets filled with speculation and rumors, which can be just as damaging, if not more so.
Yeah, for sure.
Makes you wonder if there's a way for creators to address these situations more proactively, even with the limitations of an NDA.
Right.
They can't get into the specifics.
Right.
But maybe they can acknowledge the situation in a more general sense without breaching that agreement.
Yeah, maybe emphasize the importance of respecting boundaries and privacy, both for themselves and for others involved in the case.
So at least they're acknowledging the elephant in the room, and they're kind of setting some ground rules for the online discussion,
Right.
even if they can't dive into all the details.
It could be a way for them to maintain some control over the narrative and prevent misinformation from just spreading unchecked.
Yeah, it's definitely something for creators to kind of keep in mind, especially as these kinds of online business partnerships become more common.
Absolutely.
And for viewers, it's just a good reminder that we don't always have the full story. And it's important to be cautious about jumping to conclusions or spreading rumor.
Yeah, it's about recognizing that behind those usernames and avatars, there are real people dealing with really complex situations.
Right.
And our words and actions online can have a very real impact.
So as we kind of wrap up this deep dive into this whole Illuminaughtii and Oz Media case, what's the takeaway that you want to leave with our listener today?
Well, I think the online world can be an incredibly powerful force for good and for bad.
Yeah.
And it's up to all of us to try to use that power responsibly, to think critically about the information that we're consuming and sharing, and to be mindful of the impact that our words and actions can have on others.
Absolutely. It's a good reminder that even though this specific case is closed, the conversation about online responsibility, ethical engagement, and navigating the complexities of digital information is far from over.
Well,
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, listener. We hope this conversation has given you some food for thought about how we can all kind of navigate this digital landscape with more awareness and empathy.